All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Just want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. Based on what I'm seeing outside, this may have been a virtual meeting anyway, based on the snow and conditions. So it's nice to be able to be inside and warm and still be able to meet. I thought I would just throw out some reminders this morning and then kind of an overview of our agenda. Brian sent out the agenda yesterday, so if you have that, you may want to have that up for a meeting. First reminder, April 16th is our next DARTEP meeting, and we're planning on that being virtual. During our meeting today, Beth Fighton will be monitoring questions in our chat space. So we'll do our best to stay on top of those. And then if those are answered within our time together, then we'll try to address them after the meeting. Just a reminder to mute your microphones. It seems like that is taking place. And if you haven't already, just indicate your job alike session. Brian had put information on that in the email, but also a slide. So if you still need to do that, that information should be in the email that you received yesterday from him. Okay, so we have a shorter agenda today. You'll notice that our meeting ends at 11:15, and then we have a special session at 11:30, and I would encourage you to attend that. Dave Green from Go React will be leading a session on using technology to enhance and support successful clinical experiences. And the description of that session, I'd encourage you to read that. That's on the agenda, so you can get some more information about that. Basically, we'll end our meeting time with job alike sessions, the debrief, and then we'll have a 15-minute break, and then Dave will join us for that to lead that session. We will have a couple breaks today, one that I just mentioned before Dave presents, and then the first will be as we're getting into our breakout rooms for the job alike sessions. And then just a reminder, if first of all, thank you for those of you who have who are willing to take notes today. And just a reminder, if you could see if someone in your job alike session would be willing to facilitate so that you can take notes. All right, so those are some of the things that I wanted to just put out there to begin with. So we will move on to our organizational reports. And Beth, I think we will begin with you with the treasurer's report.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I believe Brian's going to be sharing my slides. I just have a couple this morning. So the last time I reported out in November, we had a balance of just over $9,000. Since that time, we did receive an institution's membership fees. So we had a deposit to our account. We did return a check to Go React. You may recall that they had sponsored a luncheon for us that wasn't able to take place because of the COVID pandemic. And so we have returned that. So our balance as of the end of January is $77,806.04. So we are in great shape. If anyone has any questions about membership or dues, you're welcome to contact me. My information is on the next slide. And I'm always available by email as well. And that's it, Lori.
All right, thank you, Beth. So some of you who are new to DARTEP, we tend to throw out a lot of acronyms. And so some of our organizations are referred to by their acronym. So we'll start with MACT, which is the Michigan Association of Colleges and Teacher Education. And Beth, are you available to give us an update?
Sure. So MACD we're in the process of trying to figure out what this is going to look like. And so we are not at this point going to be having, and correct me if I'm wrong, board members, but the retreat, the continuous improvement retreat, the Holland retreat, because we feel that the work that's done there is best done face-to-face, and we're not in the position to have that yet. So we're looking forward to redoing it next year. But we are trying to plan right now in March, or I'm sorry, April, and I'll get the date out to people. I was just texting to say, did we decide on a date where we'll have a meeting where we're going to have people sharing how we're supporting our completers once they're in the field in a time of having people that haven't had quite the same quality clinical experience, or they've had different quality clinical experiences that might not look like the way that they're going to be teaching, hopefully going forward in the years of their curriculum. And also we're going to include an opportunity to share some of the resources that AACTE is providing members. There's a new member portal, and we're going to have representatives from AACTE sharing some of the value of being a member of AACTE. To let you know, if your institution is not presently a member of AACTE, we have negotiated that as MACD members, that anybody at a state or at an institution in Michigan may join at a 25% discount on their dues. And so we're trying to just encourage, what do you get for that? And so that'll be at our meeting. And most importantly, there is a happy hour next Thursday. And we encourage anyone who'd like to come and attend a Zoom happy hour where we just kvetch and have a glass of wine that you have to supply yourself, or whatever you choose. And Angie comes, and Gina comes, and Michael McDonald comes, and Ann Tapp comes, and it's just a nice time. So I'll risk and send the link out to DARTEP as a whole, and then have a fantasy that it's so full we have to go into breakout rooms. So all right, that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Beth. That happy hour will begin at 10 a.m. Is that accurate?
It's 5 a.m. or 5 a.m. 5 p.m. It feels like. So I'll send out the link.
Okay, very good.
Could I ask a question about a report? Is that allowed?
Certainly.
It's with respect to the comment that you made, Beth, about supporting our 2B graduates who've had a different year. We've been talking about that a lot in the teacher prep program, and I've made a commitment for us to do some workshops in the summer. And I contacted Sean Kotke to sort of keep his ears and eyes open for any sources of funding that might support that, and that we were very willing to work and to collaborate with colleagues at other institutions to offer that, probably virtually, given the situation, because not everybody will be vaccinated, plus they'll be spread out all over the place. So anyway, I would love to be part of those conversations, and I don't know to what extent other institutions are sort of thinking hard about that, but we are definitely going to do it.
I will circle back with you, Gail. That's really good information. Thank you so much for sharing. And it was good that you had the pause, because since then I got the text, April 23rd is the date of the, so I will get back to you on those details.
Okay.
So, but
Great.
and thank you,
Thank
Gail,
you.
for bringing that up. That'll be really, we'll add that to the agenda.
Great.
All right, very good. Gail, thank you again for your question. Very helpful. Let's move on to MATE, Michigan Association of Teacher Educators. Ray, do you have an update for us? Okay, we'll move on to the Michigan Public Deans Council. And Joe or Mike, do you have an update for us?
I can speak to it if Joe's not on the call. There's a lot of participants. Not hearing Joe. We met on the 16th, the Michigan Public Education Dean met on the 16th of December. And some of the discussion items included a call for the Teacher Educator Collaborative Growing Michigan Educators Pre-Collegiate Pathway Expansion Program and the EPP call for that and for collaboration with districts. We talked about the NCTQ 2020 communication to Superintendent Rice. And we talked about various legislative issues that are at different points of consideration. Some we were asking for creation, like with respect to CPR and first aid accommodations, and some we were opposed to, such as the substitute teacher if you happen to be vaguely related to somebody. But not to digress on those, we concluded with our next priorities, which will include work on social justice. And our next meeting on March 3rd, we'll be meeting with the United Tribes of Michigan and the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. We'll receive a presentation from them to frame some advocacy work in the state on behalf of the Michigan Public Deans. And lastly, the second priority that we had targeted was the continued efforts to address educator shortage, recruitment, and retention efforts.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Susan English and I co-chair MyPie, which is the Michigan Independent Educator Preparation Institutions. And we do not have an update for today other than to encourage everyone to be well. But we will be discussing getting a meeting out there or on the calendar. Okay, let us move on to the consortium outstanding achievement in teaching with technology. And I believe that is Stein. Do you have an update for us, Stein? Okay. All right, very good. Why don't we go ahead and move on to our DARTEP business. And just a couple things, as we've done virtually in the past, please indicate in the comments section if you're opposed to the approval to accept the December 4, 2020 minutes as presented. So we follow Robert's rules for that, but we're doing it a little differently simply because we're not able to do that in person. So just a reminder, and if you haven't reviewed the minutes, please do. I also wanted to give you a heads up about a survey that those of us on the team, the leadership team, have put together to get your feedback on this past year and how virtual sessions have gone and moving forward, what your preferences are. So just to get some information for you. That survey has been created, but we will send it out with information about the April meeting. But I just wanted to give you a heads up and would appreciate all of your feedback so that we can make changes or so we know that we're on track. And then a reminder that in April, we take chair-elect nominations. And so the positions of the chair and the chair-elect are 2-year positions. And so the chair-elect, as they come in as the for 1 year as the chair-elect, and then the next year as the chair. And then we also try to have one representative from MyPie, the independents, and one from public. So please be thinking about a nomination, and the chair-elect for next year would be a representative from the independents. Anything to add from Brian, Beth, or Jen to that information?
No, that sounds right to me.
Okay, very good. All right, well, we are just moving along. Let us go on to our Michigan Department of Education updates. And Sean Kopke, are you with us? Okay, do we
He's
have
there
some?
somewhere. He is. I know he's
Okay.
here. Don't give up.
All right, well, we'll wait for Sean to lead us in the next session. What time, how's our time? 9:20, yeah, so we're a little bit early. We're moving along. Maybe during this time, I will share a couple things. And Sean, if you're back, please feel free to interrupt me. A flyer was sent out yesterday with the agenda, and it's for impact, an application or information about Impact Academy fellowships. And this is through Deans for Impact. And last summer, I applied for the fellowship and I was able to get it. So I'm going through the program this year, and it's just been an amazing experience. Normally they get together. The purpose of Deans for Impact is to work with leaders in teacher education programs to improve our leadership and improve programs. And this is a national organization led by some very credible and solid leaders who have invested a lot of time into working with P-12 schools, but now working with higher ed. And anyway, I've had a great experience this year. I've grown as a leader, but it's been amazing to network with other deans across the nation, small institutions and large public institutions. So anyway, I just want to encourage you to look over the information that I sent and see if it may be something that you'd be interested in. So it's for leadership, but if you're holding a leadership, you're not a dean or director, I would still encourage you to check it out.
Sean will be right here.
All right.
He was delayed, so he's almost here. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Our
no
apologies.
problem. No problem. Totally understand.
And it was his presentation, so otherwise Darcy and I would jump in, but
Oh, totally
Not sure.
understand. Yeah, no problem. I also want to call your attention to the chat. Susan English mentioned an informal 1-hour webinar that Aquinas put on, and it was being an anti-racist educator. And so she put the link to both the recording and the slide deck. And I think that just happened in the last week, if I'm remembering correctly. So thank you for posting that information, Susan. And then it looks like Cynthia, yeah, the social emotional learning survey was sent out and will close. So a reminder, if you have not completed the survey, please do so. And that looks like we'll get a summary of the results on Wednesday, February 24th. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Cindy. And Sean, welcome. Glad to have you with us today and hope you are well.
Yes, very well. Thank you. And my apologies to everybody. And in fact, I would apologize to my whole team because I updated our calendar invite to say 9:30 rather than 9. And I do not know why I did that because the agenda clearly says 9 and not 9:30. So anyway, I was, happily working on some standards things here and did not make it. But thank you to my team members for the thank you, Jillian, for affirming that too. You also had it there. It's 9:30. My team members through multiple Teams messages pulled me away from my looking at standards to join. So Good. We are good to go. Welcome. Thank you. I can go to the next slide. This will be fairly quick, so I think that's okay. Again, reminder to follow us on social media, where we put out all of our fine recognitions of teachers with our Proud Michigan Educator campaign, as well as all important MDE alerts. Please use the hashtag #ProudMIEducator and PME to recognize the excellence of your candidates as well as your faculty. Educator is broadly construed to include all of us in this work. Okay, next slide. A reminder of our top 10 strategic education plan. Again, you can find this on the web. Or this is, we've talked about it a little bit before. Again, I've said, I think all of the bullets, except for perhaps the last one, do have some impact on educator preparation, and educator preparation can have an impact on those measures. Let's go to the next slide. Some legislative updates. So we had a lame duck session, and now we're into a new legislative session. Any of the outstanding bills that did not make it through to the governor's desk are no longer active and will need to be reintroduced and go through the full process. That includes all of the bills related to dyslexia. I understand that there's a plan to reintroduce those at some point, so the information we provided before would still be relevant in that regard. But what did get signed into law during the session, the bill to modify the critical shortage retiree section, so the ability to hire retirees without jeopardizing their retirement benefits. As substitutes, it eliminated the sunset that passed into law. So they don't have to come back to that every 3 years and re-up it. And then perhaps most notably, the Senate Bill 657 passed and is now Public Act 316. And that authorizes alternative routes to offer special education, or the ability to get special education on an interim teaching certificate. Our Office of Special Education is taking the lead on unpacking the requirements in the law to make sure that anybody hired in this, any process that leads to a special education credential on an interim would not jeopardize a school's ability to get federal financial special education funds. And so we have a meeting Monday to check in with them on their progress. And we will have more to say on that. The law specifies that this be in place by July 21st. And so we have to work on it quickly. It won't allow, I think, for a whole-scale revision of the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education to make it happen. So Office of Special Education will be, again, leading on this and helping us with that rollout of how alternative routes can propose a curriculum for approval for special education. And I see some questions have come in on there. We'll get to those easily, if not already through the chat. But we can go ahead to the next slide. So that was lame duck. This is what's been introduced so far in January that relates to education. And I was just going through this morning to see if there was anything else new that had popped up in the last day. Not much. The first is a Senate resolution. Now, it sounds alarming, proposing this amendment to the state constitution that removes higher ed from the permissible uses of state school aid. I will note that this was introduced very first thing in the last legislative session, so 2 years ago, by the same senator, and it received no action, no HIC committee hearings, no, it just got proposed. And this year, again, he proposed the exact same thing. It simply takes the one line in state school aid or in the Constitution about the school aid fund and just crosses out higher education. The senator had had nothing to say on it in proposing it again. So I don't know what the likelihood of that is, but past practice shows it didn't really go anywhere. And most of these state constitution amendments, don't go anywhere either. There are state constitution amendments to eliminate the elections of the Board of Education and have them be appointed by governors on a rolling basis. I have not seen any of those go through except things that go into referendum, and this is not that. So anyway, that's there. It's relevant to higher ed, and you can see more. And then educator evaluation bills. So the bills related to there are two things: M-STEP suspension and student growth. And there are bill numbers in the written updates. There are bills in the Senate that eliminate the student growth component from educator evaluations completely. So it's just strike all of that information out of the educator evaluation law. And then the bills in the House that move it to just a 25% of the final thing, instead of, if you remember, it was 25 and then move it to 40. So restoring it just to 25% of the teacher's evaluation. And then both sets of bills also do the same, make similar changes to administrator as well as teacher. Krista put one in. Yes, it did not make it into the written update because it was just yesterday. HB 4156 is requiring schools to employ one school counselor for every 450 students. And she's put a link to the bill there, so you can take a look at the full text of it and go from there. All right, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. I have a few slides to share with you about the presidential awards for excellence in mathematics and science teaching, or the PAIMS award cycle, and our recognition and recruitment unit leads this up. Josh Reisner, who you've seen with our presentations of the State and Regional Teachers of the Year. This is in his wheelhouse, and he asked me to say a few words on this award cycle because we really seek mentors and reviewers with strong STEM backgrounds, and we think you would provide some excellent service to this. So if we can go to the next slide. For those unfamiliar with the PAIMS program, it's the highest recognition that a kindergarten through 12th grade teacher can receive for outstanding teaching in STEM subjects in the United States. It's a National Science Foundation program on behalf of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. The next slide, please. Anyone can nominate a teacher. So anybody here can do it. Anybody in any of those groups and beyond. Teachers can also apply directly through PAIMS.org. And it alternates. So one year it's K-6 teachers, the next year it's 7-12 teachers. So the current cycle is for grades 7-12. The next slide. So an applicant, who can apply? The applicant has to teach in STEM fields or computer science as part of their contracted teaching responsibilities. It can be a public school, it can be a charter school, it can be a private school. You have to be a full-time employee of the school as determined by the state or jurisdiction and district policies. And then responsibilities for teaching students no less than 50% of the allotted instructional time. So these are not kind of one class a day teachers or part-time, but full-time teachers. And they need to have at least 5 years of full-time employment as a K-12 teacher and having taught STEM subjects prior to the current academic year. So this can't be their first year in teaching it. Next slide. Continuing with that, they have to teach in any of the 50 states, DC, Puerto Rico, Department of Defense schools, or US territories. They have to have a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution, which of course all of your graduates have, so that's not going to be a problem. Be a US citizen or a permanent resident and not have received a PAIMS award at the national level in a prior competition. So we're looking for mentors and reviewers, really, but we're also looking for nominations too. So that's the nominations piece. This is the mentors and reviewers. What do? They assist the nominees in completing the application, being thought partners and advisors, make sure that the nominees' responses are really clear in conveying their mastery of teaching in STEM. We're needed through April 1st and then potentially again in June. They work with one nominee at a time, and the time commitment, of course, depends on the level of assistance they desire. Expect 3 to 4 hours over several weeks with the applicant. Again, applications are due April 1st, and then after that date, the mentors may be called upon to assist if the individual is selected as a state finalist. There is a stipend for this to recognize your time and assistance in it. And then reviewers, they simply evaluate and score completed applications. There are two phases of this, individual reviews in April through May, and then group reviews at the state selection meeting, which is in late May and early June. So thinking about the timetable for this. Math and science applications are reviewed separately, and all reviewers also receive a stipend. So again, wanted to thank you for your time and consideration of this. If you're interested, please contact Josh Reasoner. It's reasonerj1@michigan.gov. His contact information is also at the back end of the DARTEP written updates, which have all our contact information by topic. We put that together as a nice handy. You could print that out, 2 sides, hang it up in the office, and then you can see who to contact for what. And Josh is your contact for this work. Prior to the meeting, we received one question from the field that Brian shared with me. And it was this. We have many alumni living in South Korea, and the MOEX website seems to be blocked there. Is there any fix for this or advice for these teachers living overseas who would like to obtain or renew Michigan teaching certificates? Linda Campbell is our individual in the Office of Educator Excellence who can support this. Just simply contact her at campbell.l6@michigan.gov. And she can ensure that the IP address that the candidate is using to apply is added on MOEX whitelist, and then they should be able to smoothly go through. If that doesn't work, so we do have cases where that work doesn't go any further, or we do that and it doesn't help. Linda she'll be tasked with helping them go through the application over the phone. So that they can get their application in and get certified. Okay, and that is all we prepared. So we have an MDE debrief later, and we've got 20 minutes before the next thing. So we can do some Q&A right now, and not need that whole time before. So if I look through the chat. There's a question about any discussion about administrators who have retired being allowed to take positions without unretiring. Beth Fighton posed that directly to me. I'm going to find out. I don't know on this one, but I will look it up and get an answer for you. Find out. Let's see if I've got some others. There are questions about alternative routes, which alternative routes are approved. And Gina's put a list to ProPrep, so you can see all of our providers. There's also a separate directory of alternative routes on our website. No alternative routes yet have been approved for special education. We've got to go through this application and approval, Darcy noted. And we do know that there is not going to be a lifting of the moratorium to allow for new alternative routes to get in on this. Or I should say, not an additional lifting of the moratorium. You may have seen the news about Detroit Public Schools Community District getting approved for an alternative route. And that was a temporary lifting of the moratorium directed by the superintendent. But there's not another lifting of the moratorium planned for the purposes of special education. I see Beth noted as a question about the reading endorsement.
So I just have a question. Can teachers still get the elementary reading endorsement that's separate than the specialist endorsement on their certificate now that we've moved to the grade banding?
Yes, it's not been phased out yet. Yes, they can. We have the vision for the PK3 and the 3.6 is that we would lift the level of reading knowledge and skills for elementary teachers to be equal to or the equivalent of somebody who has historically had a reading endorsement, the reading teacher endorsement. Noting that the reading teacher endorsement, though, is currently either a K-8 or a 612 endorsement, it would officially phase out with the other elementary endorsements, like the elementary EX and the elementary BX, once the 5.9 and 7.12 bands are in place. Let's see, for special ed alt cert, will there be a webinar FAQ sent out that is more comprehensible than the legislation? Well, yes, but I can't say much more because I don't know much more right now.
I just noted to Kate that it really, once the Office of Special Ed determines what that process is and what the steps are going to be, then we'll pull it together and make sure we communicate that to the current alternative routes.
Kelly Hodges asked about changes in CTE certification. I can tell you what that is. It's called one cert. So we have a one teaching certificate instead of the separate standard teaching certificate and the CTE certificate, which is what teachers have gotten so far, whereby they have on their standard certificate, they have all of the things that they can teach, plus these V codes, vocational, whatever. And that, so, tells you, oh, go look over on the standard CTE certificate and you'll find SIP codes that, qualify them for federal funding. We're merging it into one certificate. So a teacher's certificate will simply have, it'll simply say a standard teaching certificate, and then everything underneath it will be endorsements. And that includes CTE SIP codes. So the V codes will fade away because all they were as an indicator that somebody also had a standard CTE, and their teaching certificate will only have SIP codes on it if all they have is CTE. If they have CTE SIP codes plus a general ed specialization, so the elementary certification, or they have the KH endorsement, family and consumer science, for teaching those subjects in a general ed setting, we'd have those also listed on it. In the December written updates, we had some screenshots of the one certificate and how it would look. And so the SIP codes will simply become endorsements like any other. One of the things that we're working through right now is some of the odd cases. So somebody has, for example, they have a standard teaching certificate, but a professional CTE certificate, or they have some other kind of strange combination. The merger of these certificates is going to always be to the benefit of the candidate. So if they had one was professional and the other wasn't, they're, bonus, you've got your one cert will be a professional cert. And we still have some other odd ones to try and unpack in there. But that's the goal, is that teachers won't come away from that merger with less than what they had going in. I got a note from Rebecca Brewer. I posed the question that Beth Fighton had asked me about administrators. And she said, not to her knowledge, that would have to be a decision made at the Office of Retirement Services. So ORS would be the ones doing that. She said that, however, they being school administrators, can currently work up to a certain percentage of a full-time assignment, even if they are retired. If their cert has expired, they can just get a permit. We have that administrator permit for that. So as far as a broad legislative policy for this, it doesn't look like we've got something, but that's the response. Okay. Okay, Richard Rockwell had a question about sketches. Sketch person was unable to add sketches for student teacher mentors for the fall. And then Claudia noted they're now supposed to be put in by the school district. So all of the non-traditionals. Does this mean that EPIs are not able to do this anymore?
It was like maybe 3 people like me and a bunch of more people.
I will inquire on this specific question. We'll get you an answer on that, Richard. All right, other questions we have here. Work if someone obtains a CTE certification but is not a teacher. Will they obtain a CTE certificate, or will it be listed on a standard certificate? It would be listed on a standard certificate. That's the, it's going to be a one cert. Yeah, and Darcy answered that. Thank you. I didn't scroll down far enough, so thank you. When will one cert begin to be issued? We had intended for it to be here in January, but when I say here in January, I'm talking from the past, rather, because we're now in February, and so it's coming up. I don't have the official date. They needed to solve this. Kate Boswell Gallagher notes end of March is now the target for that to roll out. School social work certificate. Yes, I can give you a quick update. We just had the first 2 applications come in November, and those are under review. In fact, reviewers are getting together to reconcile reviewer comments on those, so those programs can be approved and move forward. But the MOEX programming to allow people to apply for a social worker certificate is going to take a little bit longer, and probably won't be in place before the start of the next academic year. And so I've talked with Sung T about this. We're going to have to modify the approval letters to say something to the effect of this candidate has an approval to work as a school social worker, and they've completed a program to earn the school social worker license. And then as soon as that's available, we can get all those people who earned the new credential onto that credential ASAP. But the MOEX programming is going to take a little longer on that, probably not until after the start of 2022. And so candidates who qualify ahead of time for that will get an interim. I hate to use the word interim because it's not an alternative route, but get a temporary credential that will be able to carry them until they can get that official license in MOEX. Our CTE required work hours experience number requirements going to change? I'm not aware of any plans to change those. All right. And I neglected to do a kind shout out to all of my MD colleagues who are here so that you can see them. So I'm going to do that right now while we're here, because any one of them can address any question in the chat. You can send them individual questions. We have, and I'm going just through the Zoom participant list. Gina Garner is here.
Good morning.
I see Darcy McMahon.
Good morning.
Kate Boswell Gallagher is here, manager of our
Morning.
Data and Accountability Unit. I know Krista Reed is here because I have seen her comments.
Good morning, everybody.
I know that Bridget McDowell is here for all your
Morning.
MTTC questions. I know that Sarah Kate Levan is here. Also one that said,
Good morning.
sent me my "Where are you" message, which is all good. Donna Feeblecorn is also here. Now you might say that's not an MDE person, and you'd be wrong. She is a contractor for us now, and has been working on first started working on the EPI performance score, and then is now working on our PK-12 professional as well as, and if you saw this in the written update, Ed Prep 101 resources that we're putting together. She's here. Dana Utterback is here. Let's see.
Good morning.
And see if I have failed to call anybody out. Scrolling through 126 names.
I think the request that was that you do it in opera. I'm not sure. So you might have to redo the entire introduction.
Oh, well.
The request was to introduce MDE Donna in opera, I believe is what Joe was asking.
Oh, okay.
MDE Donna.
He's used opera. My opera voice is not great. I could do it in the form of a question, to call back to my Jeopardy expertise. So, who is Dana Utterback? Who is Sarah Kate Levan? There we go. I think that covers it. It's everybody from MDE that is here today. If I failed to introduce you, speak now, and I will owe you some things. All right.
Can I make an ask, just as an aside?
Always.
Since we have, all right. So we just got the 1 year out survey responses. Thank you. But I'm not able to disaggregate by program, easily, because it's just the list of names. And so and without any identifier except the names, which can sometimes be a challenge for us with marriages and that kind of thing. So I don't know if there's data that is in there that just didn't, a column that you have access to that might have something that's easier for us that just wasn't shared in the way it was outputted. So, just as a aside, like even the PIC or I know they share their EID numbers with you and whatever the equivalents are at the other institutions. So that is one question, because then we can try to disaggregate by program a little more easily. And second, if there was any way, how many people that you attribute to Eastern or a particular institution for the 1 year out that you sent surveys to. So we have I know I've got, 70 odd responses, but I don't know what response rate that is for our group. So that would be helpful information to have.
Yeah, we could definitely do, here's how many we sent it to. Trying to think about a variable we could give you for, we could probably give you PIC, not all of them will have, it's not guaranteed everybody will have a PIC in case there's a glitch that happens. They're identifying information that was entered into REP, the employment database. Doesn't perfectly match what they've entered into MOEX. Sometimes the PIC doesn't happen and we have to work to resolve. We could give email. That might have also changed. This is always our difficulty, is how do we connect the various data? We could give PIC, at least most of them will have it. There might be one or two where it's missing and you'd have to connect them on other info. Would that work?
Yeah, I think something, because right now it's great information, but I'm trying to, the good news is we got 70 some odd responses, which is good. The bad news is I'd have to look up every single person and hope I had their name right and figure it out. And
response rate would be easy to give as well.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I got a response from Rebecca regarding the sketch issue, and she said this: we don't have a non-traditional programs category anymore because it's all programs. That effort should be counted by the district for sketch credit, so the district can submit it. However, EPIs can still submit them as professional learning for sketch credit. Marty Snitchen is our team member who has been helping people with this. His contact information is in the written update. And you can reach out to him for assistance on that task. I think one of the worries was people getting like double sketches from the district and the EPI, both submitting it and trying to not make that happen. So.
Richard, do you want to follow up? Does that give you the answer that you need, or do you want to follow up with another question while we have MDE here?
Yeah, typically the university has always put them in. And so we've never had a school ever do that. So that's why we weren't sure when we got the notice, when you did the drop down, that category wasn't there to do it anymore for 2021. So that's why we made the call to check on that. And then the response was to like have the school district, but they'd never done it before. We always did it, at least for us.
Sean, anything else before we go to break?
No, I don't have anything else. So.
Okay.
We're good.
Very good. All right. Well, we are actually on time. We are going to eliminate the debrief because we just included that. That was scheduled for 11 o'clock. So we'll take that out and we will come back after a break at 10:15. And as I'm looking through names, I just want to encourage you, if you do want to join a job alike session, that's what we're going to go into after our break, that you could add the number to your name. So number 1 for accreditation, there you go. 2, certification, 3, deans and directors, and 4 for field placement directors. So that will be helpful as we'll organize the breakout rooms. Okay, we'll see you at 10:15. Everyone is back from our job alike sessions. So now we will have a time of reporting out, and I will begin for the deans and directors group. And if you were the facilitator, or if you've agreed to report out for your group, just a reminder to try to keep it under 5 minutes, preferably about 3 to 5 minutes. And after I go, then we'll move to certification officers, and then accreditation and assessment, and then finally field placement directors. So after I'm done, just feel free to unmute and share. Okay, so we had conversations that focused on a couple things. First, Joe Lubig talked about some social justice initiatives that he's involved with, and the Michigan Public Deans are having conversations, setting up meetings, meeting with Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And he also shared about some challenges that he's had in his area with just some racial slurs, individuals in their district who are hesitant to make name changes. And just, we talked about whether some of those individuals are uninformed, and we suspect that it's not a matter of being informed, but not taking the initiative to make changes, sometimes based on personal agenda. So we talked about that. Jane Finn talked about some changes that were made in Saugatuck. And so that provided that was some good news. Susan English also mentioned maybe this is an opportunity for us to become anti-racist educators and look into other issues and topics to address injustice in order to disrupt inequity. The second part of our conversation was about the Explore program through the Future Proud Michigan educators. And yeah, just some real positive excitement around that. So MDE suggested that we connect with Holly Crothers, who's the point person. And then Gail Richmond talked about maybe this is a good opportunity for institutions to collaborate, have cross-institutional conversations. And then Susan English thought about, well, maybe this is a good opportunity for us to not only collaborate, but work with ISDs. And John then also wondered about, so if this is the direction that we could take and work with ISDs, work together, maybe we should make connections with disciplinary tracks and not just be isolated, but work together and especially each other's strengths. And then, Marcia mentioned also having conversations with community colleges and not to forget that those are going to be very important partners when we consider the Explore program and cadets. And then finally, Beth from EMU talked about their pathway program and the success that they've had. And I think in the last 5 years, if I remember that correctly, through Eastern. All right, that will be, unless anyone would like to add to our session. All right, very good. Why don't we move on to certification officers then?
Okay, I'm Jamie McDonald from Central Michigan University. I'll report out on the certification officers meeting. We talked about most of the questions were answered in the Q&A from the MDE updates. The pandemic is affecting enrollment, and it was asked how many institutions are going into social media advertising, including possibly TikTok. Aquinas and U of M Ann Arbor have accelerated or a master's program for certification, and they talked about that. Krista Reed asked about federal loan forgiveness, if we're using that as a marketing item for teacher ed. And Ferris said they've always promoted and advertised loan forgiveness, and they try to get the students to research the programs available according to the list of the subject areas that are eligible. And Christine Lancaster asked about other institutions going into the new elementary program this fall or next fall. And there was some discussion about what different institutions are doing and advising in groups at Ferris. People can stay on the old program if they're graduating by 2023. And there was also a discussion about how many institutions are requiring 2 bands for elementary or 1. And then Krista Reed talked about there are many odd applications coming through in MOACs, things from a long time ago, and to review those back to the institutions to determine if they can still be recommended if they graduated a long time ago. The administrative rule that had a 5-year limit, that rule is gone. So it's up to the institutions to determine how they want to recommend people for certification. Talked about the cost of the test for the new bands for elementary. And it was recommended that the students could space those out once they finish the methods classes for, say, math. They could take the math test then and not take them all at the end of their program. That might help. And Bridget is going to check into if the vouchers are good for more than one subtest, if we can get an increased number of vouchers to help our students. And some institutions are looking at adding a lab fee to coursework that would cover the cost of the test. The students could have it covered through federal student loans. That's all I have.
All right, very thorough. Thank you. And let's move on to accreditation and assessment.
Okay, get my notes. So we talked about the CAPE annual report window is open right now. So most of us are working on that CAPE annual report. Gina updated us that CAPE is going to be moving to not using independent volunteer reviewers any longer on the CAPE annual report, and that CAPE staff will review to offer some consistency to how we get the feedback and to get our feedback in a more timely manner, because currently we don't get the feedback for the previous report back until we're working on the next one. The 8 annual measures, it seems like they're making some changes to how they want that presented on the website. So some institutions got some feedback that they're, like, for example, attaching a link to someone else's site for reporting the data, like student loan default rates is not being accepted, and that they're getting to a point where they want more consistency on how we're formatting our 8 annual measures on the website. The advanced standards are in public comment currently, so we encourage you to look at those. There's going to be a CapeCon, a virtual CapeCon coming up in the spring. They're going to focus on standards 1, 3, and 5 because those have the most significant changes to the CAPE standards. The cost is $200 if you're interested. We talked about moving to the new programs and when we report that significant change to CAPE on the annual report. And Gina said that would depend on the EPP and when we begin the implementation of those new programs. And let's see. What am I missing? So we talked about also CAPE on this last round of feedback. If there were significant errors or something they wanted you to change, they had a deadline of, we had to submit those changes by January 31st of 2021 for last year's report. And we talked about what are the impacts if we didn't submit those changes by that deadline. I don't think there's consequences for that at this time, as long as an annual report was submitted. And the big question I think we'll need an answer to, and Gina's says we need to talk to the OEE team for this, but as we're changing the secondary programs, we're only required to do the professional standards with math and ELA at this time, but if we choose to apply those to the social studies and science now, how do we handle the changes to the social studies and science approvals? Because we'll only be submitting applications for the ELA and the math. So that was one of our big questions. Did I miss anything?
I am going to report for the directors of field placements. We spent most of our time on 2 big issues. The first, continuing the conversation about the sketches. So we asked Darcy to help us and get more clarification on this issue, because what we're finding is, though Sean, you indicated that EPIs can still report mentors who have served, or teachers who have served in that mentoring role, we do not seem to have that available to us in that drop-down box. And what we're also finding are all of our districts are responding differently. So this is a real easy pivot for them. They can just add it to an option for teachers to gain through their district PD, but some of our districts, don't have the ability to do so. So they're struggling with that. There's also inconsistency in the number of sketches being provided. So our concern as directors of field placement is this was intended to be an opportunity to honor or acknowledge the time and the mentoring that the teachers are doing. And when it's now become problematic in some situations, there's not continuity. So we have mentor teachers from one, if they're teachers next door in classrooms, one has it from one university, the other has it from another. It's being handled differently. They're getting different credits. So as a group, we'd really like to have some clarification on that. And Darcy has graciously agreed to help us kind of have a conversation with the MDE about how we can clear that up. The rest of our time was really spent thinking about some of the implications of COVID. So dealing with placements, still really difficult to find. And yeah, if there's a way that we could get some communication again, maybe from MDE to districts, encouraging them to host our students, whether that be in pre-student teaching or student teaching, much like we as teacher prep programs have been encouraged to allow our students to fill some of those hard to fill spots. And again, don't really know the avenue for that, but would love to have some further conversation. And then just trying to respond to students who find themselves either in classrooms where some of the protocols are not being followed. How do we support them? Or students who are not comfortable getting the vaccine or choosing not to and feeling pressure from districts. And then finally, students who are having a hard time following the protocols of their school. So they're in person, the school shifts to some hybrid, and they're frustrated with that and come back to us and want replacements or want a different type of placement. So we were just able to do some group problem solving and talking about how we're responding to those situations. I think that's all, unless someone has ideas to add.
Okay, very good. Jamie, Jennifer, and Jane, thank you for reporting out. Sounds like some good conversations. Let's transition now into a break. So we will go till 11:30. And when we come back at 11:30, then we'll be able to hear the session from Dave Green on using technology to enhance and support successful clinical experiences. Again, I encourage you to read the description and join us at 11:30. So we'll see you back in about 30 minutes.
Just real quick, if the Kathy who was part of group 4, if you would please email me your email address, I'd like to add you to the clinical list. Thank you.
Lori, could I take one moment while we're waiting?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. This wasn't in the Deans and Directors update, but I wanted to share with the whole group because I think it's very important. I used a term from cybersecurity in the initial presentation today that does cause offense, and I apologize for that. I wanted to make that clear and thank everybody who wrote to members of my team to, out of surprise for that item, and to express, their offense. And I deeply apologize for using that term. I've changed the archival PowerPoint, so it is about safe access, because that's what that list is. It's not for people trying to log into MOEX from out of country. It still will remain in the video, of course. That can't be changed, but I did want to make that apology public to the whole group, not just to the deans and directors in the breakout.
Sean, thank you. Appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable and say that to the whole group. We just found out that Dave Green is going to be joining us And so he was waiting for us to approve his registration, but that is done now. So we should have him with us. Dave, just let me know if you are here.
I am here.
Okay,
Sorry about
very
that. Just
good.
going through the process of unmuting and preparing.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for joining us
Absolutely.
today, and I'll just hand it over to you.
Excellent. Bear with me for just a moment, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, well, I'm really glad to be with you all today. Our topic is one that I think it is important and hopefully will be helpful for everyone, using technology to enhance and support successful clinical experiences. Hopefully you'll gain some insights and some ideas from various aspects of this. I'll start by sharing some initial thoughts and information, and then I'll also have a few of your colleagues from local teacher education programs in Michigan sharing some thoughts and experiences a little later as well. And then if time allows, and I assume that it will, we'll certainly open it up and would love to answer questions for the group as well. My name is Dave Green. I'm an account executive with GoReact. GoReact, if you're not familiar, is a longtime advocate and innovator in the area of video-based formative feedback. We've been around for about 11 years now. We work with a number of teacher education programs across Michigan and surrounding states, and we're thrilled to see so many here today, faces and names. I don't know how many of you recognize this thing, this piece of classic technology. This is an abacus. It's also known as a counting frame. And this was essentially an ancient calculator of sorts. It was used from what I've seen from about 500 years BC through fairly recent times. It used to transact business, counting sheep, and figuring out how much someone owes you for certain things. And it worked in its day. In the 1960s, our modern calculators started to be sold in the mass market. And it was in the 1970s that we got pocket-sized calculators. Those were both technological advances that were necessary because of changing and evolving times. We all had different types of math to do that the abacus wasn't ideally suited for. We had more transactions. Life just became more complicated. I wonder, how would you feel if, as a math instructor, you were asked to teach an advanced math class with an abacus? It'd be difficult. If you showed up to a meeting and you had someone from your accounting department show up to talk budget, for example, with an abacus, or if you had a mortgage broker or a banker show up for a meeting with one of these counting frames, you'd feel like maybe you want to look for someone else. They might not be best suited for your purposes. Again, technology that had its time and was effective in its time, but just didn't have the ability to scale for today's needs. And the same can be said of the topic that we're discussing today. As we have a need to do more and to do better, we sometimes have to look for and embrace technology that can allow us to do that, making today's realities fit our aspirations for today and tomorrow. We'll talk about three main things today. We're going to talk about how technology can help us as we seek deeper learning and clearer feedback for our students. Essentially, how we can improve the quality of feedback and also improve outcomes for our students. We'll talk about how we can use technology for faster mastery of key skills, and then how technology can help us do more with less. And certainly there's a need to do that today as things evolve. Again, we're raising the bar in terms of quality and outcome, but we're trying to do that in some cases with more limited resources. So students really need two things in order to develop their skills. They need awareness and they need input. Awareness and input. And to the extent that we can move the needle in both of those areas, we can see more rapid skill development. We can see improvements there. And we can see consistency around that more rapid skill development. But it really is those two key areas that we have to focus on, and research has shown that video of oneself is the best way to build awareness. Now, early last year, IT staff and admins scrambled to provide tools to support remote teaching. Those efforts primarily focused on remote lecture capture and delivery, and that was out of necessity. We had to teach students in a fully remote environment, and we had to do it quickly. What normally would have taken months and probably years to do, we did in weeks. And so they went looking for that type of technology, but they were often unaware of a need for a tool related to remote assessment and observation. It's just not a realm that they're in every day. Every area on campus, every college, every department has slightly different needs. And so again, there's just a lack of awareness in some cases, and sometimes a lack of time to investigate and implement something like that. Oftentimes there's a thought of almost like video is video. We have Zoom, we're good, right? And they don't understand that what Zoom or YouTube can do in terms of delivering video for students to see, hopefully in a secure environment, is not the same as being able to do true remote feedback in a way that brings clarity and again helps students to evolve their skills more rapidly. But more and more remote observation tools use of video is a more common part of the tech stack. It's our job to educate the teams that deal with IT and other administrators on the need for that kind of tool for our programs. Now, here's an example of video as a formative feedback tool that we can all understand and we're used to. Since the 1950s, coaches have been using game film to communicate with their athletes. It serves a unique purpose because athletes can see while they hear the coach. They can understand in a much more clear way what they need to do. So let's imagine in this play, just after this moment, this player in white gets hit, the ball gets fumbled, and that's something that they need to address, they want to avoid in the future. If the coach just goes and verbally talks to the player and says, hey, you remember that play where the ball was fumbled? You really need to keep your hands, both hands on the ball when you're about to get hit. When you don't do that, you're more vulnerable to a fumble. It would be really common and it frequently happen that the player may, with their best recollection and the best of intentions, they say, coach, I always keep both hands on the ball when I'm about to get hit. Always. I've been playing since I was in the Pee Wee League. I was 4 years old when I started playing football. I know what to do. And the problem is if they discount that feedback, whether they verbalize that process of thought or not, when they discount the feedback to any extent, the feedback really is diminished. It has a limited impact. Now, again, they're acting in good faith. They believe that they had both hands on the ball. But when we can rewind the game film and freeze a frame and we can say, look, this guy was on your shoulder and look where your hand was. If it was here instead, you would have had control of that ball and the fumble wouldn't have taken place. This player is more likely to accept that feedback in this case and say, coach, I didn't realize that. I'll be more careful. I know what to do. This same thing happens in our classrooms. In the heat of the moment, in the fog of war, so to speak, when we're standing in front of a classroom teaching kids, we have all sorts of competing things happening. You've got adrenaline, You're excited, you want to do well. You've got fear and nerves playing a role. You've got a kid in the back being disruptive and all these other distractions and factors. It's so easy to not be aware of something significant that took place that you did or didn't do. So then when you debrief with the student after the fact, again, whether they verbalize it or not, in some cases they're thinking, I didn't do that. I know not to do that. And in a similar way, having the ability to review things for them in a way where they can see what we saw is really taking formative feedback to the next level. Video-based formative feedback is like game film for the classroom. Self-reflection leads to deeper learning experiences. Video provides incredible clarity for students related to the feedback that we provide. Students can revisit and continue to learn from these past experiences over time so that the lessons that we're trying to give them, the wisdom and experience you're trying to give them percolates. There's less runoff. More of it seeps deep into their mind, and they're able, through time-space repetition, to see these experiences and review the feedback and take action that really improves their performance, not only in the short term, but in the long term. This is one really clear way that technology can help us to enhance successful clinical experiences. Now, speaking on the impact of video assessment, Mark Lillibridge was a celebrated collegiate player. He also had some time playing in the NFL, and he had this to say: I was an average player at best, so I need to prepare different than a star player may have to. There are players in the NFL when I played, and even today, who could be in the Hall of Fame off talent alone. A guy like Michael Vick has stated publicly that he did not take film study and preparation seriously early in his career. Then there are players like Peyton Manning, Ray Lewis, and Larry Fitzgerald, all really recognized successful players who devour game work and take their God-given talent to a different stratosphere. And I would bet that we all have students in both of these camps. We have the students that were built for this, made for this. They come ready, in a sense. Not that they don't have to learn anything, but they just have an extra measure of talent and ability, and they could be in that teaching Hall of Fame off talent alone, in a sense. Now, they don't want to rest on their laurels and take that for granted because they'll underperform in the long term. But we have students at different levels. We also have those that have the seeds of greatness. They can be amazing teachers, but they need that input and awareness. And to the extent that we can give them more of that, better input and awareness, they can go further and become more as professional teachers. Classroom video helps students incorporate reflective learning and become aware of their skills as presenters. Now, I was part of a meeting recently within the last couple of weeks with an instructor from a Michigan school who was telling other instructors about an experience that she had related to this. She related in that meeting that she had just watched a student that she thought was a fantastic student, performed really well, just absolutely bomb an exercise with the student. She was taken back. She was shocked by how poorly she did in this exchange with a student. And she wondered, how can I present this to the student in the way that's going to be most impactful for them and maybe not sound like I'm just harping on them and being critical. And so she decided that what she'd do in this case is she let the student review their film and tell her their thoughts. So she did that reflection exercise, and her jaw just dropped immediately. She recognized, do I really sound like that? It was so monotone, and I didn't realize I was doing that when I was teaching. What was communicated was that turned into a really powerful learning experience, a deeper learning experience than it normally would have been, because the students saw what this instructor saw instantly. They recognized what they should be doing differently. And instead of being told and trying to remember and figure out what that means, they saw it and they verbalized what they need to change. And together they made a plan on the best ways to do that. And that is taking these experiences to the next level and having the biggest impact possible. And I think it's advisable, I think, for anyone that's doing this type of work to consider, at least in some cases, allowing students to do self-reflection first. I've heard from many programs that saves valuable time. When they have so much work to do and so many students to provide feedback for, when the students do that first pass and then they can come along behind and fill in the gaps and pat them on the back for the things that they recognize on their own, it shortens the amount of time that they have to provide feedback in order to get to the same ultimate point, the same goal. Something to consider. Now, teacher education programs are turning toward technology to find streamlined solutions for increased demands. Studies have shown how video observation can increase student learning outcomes while also providing more student coaching touch points. So we can improve both the quantity and the quality of feedback through some of the technology that's available. But again, we're turning to this almost out of necessity because we have an aspiration to do more. And yet we have realities of the resources that we have, and technology can make those two ends meet. In terms of doing more with less, we have things constantly in flux, constantly changing. In the fall, we have the convergence of two storm systems. On one hand, the Michigan Department of Education has some new clinical experience requirements that will go into effect. So there'll be more observation that's required and a need to track all of what's being done and have a way to evidence that it's being done. On the other hand, while all of those new experience requirements were being built out, no one had any idea that COVID was coming and that it would have an impact on our ability in certain areas, or rather the resources that we have access to. Today, post-March, our budgets are often more strained and stretched. Our time has more demands. We sometimes have less human resources available, less staff available to cover all of the observation that we need to do. And with increased observation comes increased travel time, comes increased budget demands. Now, this is what we really want to do more of. All of us, if we could, we want to spend more time with each student because this is where we see progress being made. This is where we feel like we're having an impact. When we sit down and we can communicate with that student. Platforms that offer video observation, remote observation, this type of formative feedback can add flexibility that provides more of this experience. And by that, I mean that you can use them synchronously or asynchronously. So I can use them live with the student or after the fact in a way that gives me a better work-life balance, more flexibility, and perhaps the ability to spend more time on feedback. I can also use them in person with the student or fully remote. And so it becomes a really powerful contingency planning tool. I can be in person, recording, and providing a richer, clearer feedback experience, again, in person, or we can do that in a blended environment, or we can do that fully remote. It makes a transition between those environments so much faster and easier and smoother. Now, again, we all want to be doing more of this, spending as much time as possible with the students, but we find ourselves too often doing more of this. With more feedback can come more travel responsibility. That puts a lot of burdens on our time. And we may find in some cases especially in a situation like this where snow is falling, I've got to leave a little early. And so I've got 5 minutes to provide feedback. I've got 10 minutes or 15 minutes to provide feedback when I know that I could provide more if I had more time. So when we're doing more driving, we're giving up the ability to provide more feedback, to spend more time on that feedback. And that can have an impact on communication and clarity regarding exactly where students can focus their attention and bringing them clarity on where they can focus that attention, again, in order to move the needle on their performance and really affect lasting change in terms of their abilities. And so that can lead to a slower progress with their skill development. If they don't know exactly where to improve, what to improve, they don't tend to improve much. Now, again, going back to the travel, the other aspect of that that's really difficult when we talk about doing more with less is the budget side. Because again, the budget pressures are very real. We have to do what needs to be done with as little expenditure as possible. We don't want to sacrifice quality. We need to get the job done, but we need to do it in the most fiscally responsible way that we can. So I'll bring your attention to the quote in blue here. We pay our supervisors 50 cents a mile as they travel to conduct observations. Considering the number of miles that won't need to be traveled due to GoReact, this is a huge cost savings for us. The technology and the ability of what you're bringing to the table is transformational, honestly. Now, in addition to the per mileage reimbursement, there's often a food reimbursement as well and other things like that that add to the cost. And so there's sometimes this feeling that technology like this, using video for observation, must be expensive, prohibitively expensive. In reality, the cost savings make it something that is very affordable, meaning that if you even just use video observation in place of travel for 2 observations out of your 5 or 6 observations that you're doing with students, that's typically enough to more than pay for the technology. In fact, you have savings even at that point, but you also have the benefit of using it more when needed, again, as a contingency planning tool. If we have to go blended or fully remote, we can do that. And the quality benefits of giving the students an easier way to do that self-reflection and giving our supervisors a better quality of balance in their lives. It also provides us with the ability to reach a broader audience of students from a larger geographic area and to tap a better, bigger pool of supervisors for the work that needs to be done. If we have students that move to some other area of the state that's inconvenient, some other state in the country, potentially, temporarily or permanently, whatever the case might be, you have a better reach with this type of a tool as well. And we've talked about using technology like this for that clinical component, and that's an important application. That's our purpose really today in focusing on that. But I don't want you to think that that's the only area where it can be used. There are so many different applications within our teacher education programs, from early field experience and having knowledge of what our students are about to see on a video of a teacher teaching, looking for that feedback from them, to doing disposition assessments or micro teaching or having CAPE artifacts to make that renewal process easier. There are many areas like that where video observation technology can be incredibly helpful. Now, I'd love to give you a better visual of what this type of technology actually looks like, some of the things that you can do so that you can then just better understand, I guess, what is evolving and continuing to have a deeper and deeper place in our programs. So here we see a couple of student videos that have been submitted. And these videos are available for us to to review and provide feedback on as soon as we see them come in. Our accounts are linked to our students' accounts. So when they record with their smartphone or with their tablet or with their laptop, we have immediate access to those videos. When I click on the video, I have the ability to provide feedback in several different ways. Now, this is just a sample demonstration video I pulled from YouTube. Same would be a similar process for your students. I provide all of my feedback on the right-hand side, and I will point out that in terms of time savings, sometimes this is really helpful for our supervisors as well, the ability to speed up the playback when needed. Now, this isn't chipmunk mode yet when I'm at 1.3 playback speed, but it does give me some efficiency in certain settings where something's about to happen and I don't want to wait for it to come up, or the students are working on something quietly. I can maybe move through a little bit faster, and I can even speed that up further if I'd like, or slow it down and play it at half speed if I need to. Feedback comes again on the right-hand side. I can type a comment, so I could say something like, whoops. For example. Now, as soon as I start to type, the video pauses automatically. I don't have to do that manually. I don't have to come over here and pause it and come back. I just focus 100% on the feedback and start to type. When I'm done typing my feedback, I hit enter and it posts above. This comment is an automatically time-stamped and hyperlinked element of feedback. So whether the student is going through this video at some point now or in the future on their own, or whether we're debriefing together after this teaching is over, which I'm sure would happen in most cases, when this is clicked on, it jumps back to the moment that it pertains to a few seconds in advance. And then we see a text overlay with our feedback on the video, again, like that coach rewinding the game film and bringing real clarity to that moment. I can continue to add feedback back like this as much as needed, but I also have the ability to add audio and video-based feedback. So multimedia feedback that remains multimedia feedback. Once I'm finished with it and it posts above, the student can click on it. It'll jump back to the moment that it pertains to. The student's video pauses while my audio or video feedback plays. Now, the reason that that's so beneficial is because it allows us to have a better connection with our student that sometimes is remote. We can build more of a relationship when they can see me and hear me. But beyond that, I can also model things for them, and I can explain things with greater clarity. So for example, if I heard this student say something that I felt like should have been said differently, whether that was they were monotone and it wasn't very engaging, or maybe the tonality gave what they said a different meaning. Well, rather than trying to explain that in written word, I'm going to use my microphone and or camera, and I'm going to say, I heard you say this. What if you said it this way instead? And demonstrate so that they really get it at a deeper level. Beside any element of feedback, students can respond. They can ask a question or answer a question that we ask. And then we can continue a dialogue there. We can go back and forth as long as needed. And that conversation, that thread of communication will stay immediately beneath the feedback that it pertains to. So I mentioned previously, as we move into this phase of additional requirements related to our clinical experiences, tools like this can give you the ability to archive and have access to artifacts and evidence going forward. All of this is archived for at least 5 years. So both you and your students can come back and revisit these discussions and grab again artifacts and evidence as needed. By the way, all of this is also, we're FERPA, COPPA, and HIPAA compliant. Now, in addition to those elements of feedback that we just mentioned, here's one final element that I want to point out, these markers. Now, markers are a really common tool and popular tool. They give us an ability to flag or tag video quickly. I can set up markers that are aligned with the requirements of EdTPA or any other system. I'll show you some examples, but the examples that I show are just for illustration. You can change what these say and represent. You can change the color scheme and order in any way that you need to. So I may be looking for behavioral issues, for example, for class participation, effective questioning, or any host of other things. And as I witness these things, whether for good or bad, I can click the marker that pertains to these elements and quickly flag that moment. You'll notice that the video didn't pause, it didn't take any time. I could add a comment to this if I wanted to, but typically I'm going to just mark these moments so that now when I get with this student after the fact, together we can click through this and we can see, they can see what I saw, and we can have discussion around these moments. Now, that's important for the reasons that we've already talked about. They may not be consciously aware of some of the things that they're doing, and this makes them consciously aware. But beyond that, this also adds a quantitative element to the whole feedback process. So I can see how many markers have been used of each type, where in the presentation they've been used, and so on. And now I can track the effectiveness of all of this. Is a student progressing from video to video based on the markers that are being used and how often I'm seeing them? And you can see this for the individual and also for the cohort. So I can see for a larger group, and where there's a problem that seems to be affecting the larger group, we can maybe look to address it, and even some broader ways upstream potentially. That's valuable data to have. Now, as I mentioned before, not only can tools like this be used for giving feedback to the student on their performance, but also the student can use this for self-reflection. This can be used for peer review, so students can give feedback to each other. And then you can also load video, and that can be video that you create on your own, that you get from partner schools, that you get from previous students where you have permission to use the video. Or it could be YouTube videos that you load into a library. This can be your own library or a shared library that everyone in the department has access to. And then you can serve video up to your students as an assignment, as instruction. They can watch a video of someone else teaching or performing some skill, and then they can comment on it, use a marker set that you provide to them. You can have as many marker sets as you'd like. And just like the videos, all of your marker sets can be used semester after semester and can be shared across the department or can live in your own individual library. Same with rubrics. So you can use consistent resources and be lockstep as you grade as much as possible. In fact, even using GoReact for inter-rater reliability and that type of thing, again, to ensure that we're grading in consistent ways. Now, one final thought that I'll share with you in terms of an ability that might be helpful to be aware of. GoReact has a feature that allows you to utilize up to 9 cameras at the same time. That's part of the same video. So we can now get students recording in small groups while they're remote even, interacting, doing role plays and simulations. They could simulate a parent-teacher conference, for example, or an intervention, or do some micro-teaching, anything along those lines. And then you can provide feedback to the group using all of these same tools. And so again, going back to the abacus, as you raise the bar on yourself, looking to improve the quality of the experience for the students and the clarity of the feedback that they're getting, and then also as mandates essentially raise the bar for us over time, in addition to our own efforts, the technology will give you the ability to make what's expected of ourselves and of us match the resources that we have available, which is sometimes a difficult feat. Now, I mentioned earlier I'll stop this share for now. I mentioned earlier that we're going to have some people join us. And so I'd like to turn some time over to them to spend some time talking about their experience with using technology to help with a more successful clinical experience. First, we'll hear from Amy and Megan from Grand Valley State University. I'd welcome you to go ahead and unmute. And then when they're done, we'll hear from Sarah from Hope College. I'm sure these are people that you're familiar with already. And following Sarah, we'll hear some comments from Carrie from Western Michigan University. Amy and Megan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Dave. Prior to the current academic year, we were using GoReact on a small scale with some of our teacher candidates. I'm sure as many of you, in preparation for the fall, we decided we really needed to scale up our use of GoReact, providing for all of our field supervisors and College of Education students to use it. This academic year, we are using the platform to conduct teacher assistant and student teacher observations virtually. Faculty field supervisors really report that they are able to provide high quality formative feedback through the use of GoReact. We also provided access to methods course faculty who are using GoReact with the students in their courses this academic year as well. Now, across our methods courses and field courses, faculty are using it to provide exemplars of teaching practices, to provide formative feedback to students as they practice teaching practices, and for student self-reflection and analysis. Moving forward, and when we return to in-person field observations, hopefully next fall, or maybe sooner, we would like to continue to also use GoReact as a supplement to in-person observations for many of the reasons that Dave mentioned, as we see the value in the level and type of formative feedback we're able to provide and the benefits for students in engaging in self-reflection that we've realized through our widespread use of it this academic year already. It will also allow us to accommodate teacher candidates who may be engaged in a distance placement or support the needs of some of our distance PK-12 partners who have desperately been wanting to have student teachers in their area, but that has been prohibitive up to this point because of the distance for observations. We also see it as an excellent tool as we embed and implement early field experiences and the core teaching practices in our programs, recognizing its effective use within the learning cycle and as a potential means of providing evidence of proficiency. Now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Megan Freudigman, who is GVSU's resident expert on GoReact, and she'll share some additional details about how it's being used in our programs.
Hi there. So I have been using GoReact since the fall of 2018 when we piloted it at Grand Valley. And I started using it with just my elementary student teachers in the field, and then slowly seeing the benefits and the value in having this tool for video feedback and observations. I started sharing it with our other university field coordinators and then our other programs as well. And then of course, during the time of COVID, we found the absolute benefit of being able to just very quickly and seamlessly move into using this wholly and solely when we had to pivot last spring. So at that time, we were able to easily have our students when they lost their placements really during COVID, they started teaching their roommates, their family members, and finding children in their lives that they could teach and using GoReact to record and do live observations as well. I think the benefits that we've found over the last couple of years while using it at Grand Valley is just that rich, robust feedback that we're able to offer our students, and also just our students seeing the value in seeing themselves, which I think is such an important piece of this, because as teachers and educators, the only way that we can get better is by really seeing what we're doing and saying as we're enacting our practices of teaching. And so we do a lot of work with our students around the practices, the core teaching practices. So now we have assignments that we've created within GoReact where they're doing very specific small enactments of teaching in our teacher assisting program
They do a listening, interpreting, thinking with students. So they film themselves several times, posting that into GoReact, and then their university field coordinators are able to then go in and get very specific feedback based around the decomposition of that practice. And we just this semester are starting to do small conversations with our students in elementary student teaching as well. So those are kind of two ways that we're using that with the practices of teaching. But our students have found value in this, which I think is the most important thing, is that they are learning about themselves and about how to improve in the classroom because of this really intentional, intimate way that we're able to connect. Our process is that if they're doing a recording, they record their video, they post their video. We have set markers based on our Danielson rubrics that we've created and used and modified within our program. They reflect and use those markers on their own teaching first, and then we go in as university field coordinators to watch their videos, and then we meet and watch the video, pieces of the video. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but we look for the specific areas in their videos that we want to talk to, either the celebrations or the things that we need to work on and grow from. And then, as Amy mentioned, we also have our content faculty who are now starting to use it as well in their courses, which we're finding is beneficial as we want to grow our students as educators in the practices and in this profession. So those are just a few small ways that we're using it. But I've found great value since 2018 in just my ability to provide that feedback. And so we are grateful for this. It does not replace the in-person value of having those in-person observations as well, but we find it to be an and. We love that this is an opportunity that we have to be able to help our students grow.
Yeah, thanks you, Amy and Megan. Appreciate that. Sarah?
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Hoovey, and I'm the Director of Student Teaching at Hope College. We just started GoReact in the fall semester. I started it just with our student teachers because of the need for remote supervision. We started with about 30 student teachers and 7 or 8 college supervisors. One of the main concerns going into it, especially for our veteran supervisors, was learning how to use a new tech tool really fast, and how much time that would take and the support that would be available. And we've been really pleased on that end of it. It was very easy and user-friendly and intuitive, and we've been really happy with the tech support. We've had a GoReact representative that's come to some of our college supervisor meetings and some of our staff meetings to answer questions about GoReact. So that was one thing I just wanted to share about how user-friendly it really was for our college supervisors and for our student teachers to learn how to use. We found the benefits of GoReact to be the flexibility that it offers. Some of our host schools are allowing our supervisors in the building, but others of them aren't at all. And some of our supervisors just don't feel comfortable going into the buildings very much right now. So it gives them the flexibility to decide which observations they want to do in person and which ones they want to do remotely. When they do the remote supervisions, they can either watch the video that the student has recorded on GoReact, or they can also come in live and watch the student teacher as they're actually teaching, which I think is a great option as well. So it's like similar to them being kind of right there. When they do the observation, we also have created a rubric that is in line with our student teacher assessment tool. So they're able to track and give feedback on the exact same elements that they would be doing if they're in person by going through that rubric and having that attached. And then they also use the markers and the comments as they're watching the video at the same time. The college supervisors and myself have found that one of the biggest benefits is the different perspective that it gives to student teachers. I think a lot of times when they're being observed, they're so thinking about how they look and how they feel and what they're seeing and the anxiety and all those emotions that go with being observed. And then when they watch the video back, it really takes them out of that perspective, and they're able to have kind of this outsider look at that experience and really see then directly, it provides that data for our supervisors to say, see, here's what you were doing, here's, you know, and they can, it really shows them directly exactly what their college supervisor is critiquing or observing as some of their strengths as well. We are also using the GoReact system as a ways for our students to practice using our student teaching assessment form themselves. So they do like an initial video where they go through then and use the rubric and make comments using our markers as a way to form kind of a baseline and a self-assessment to begin with of what their strengths are and what their areas of growth will be. We've also used it to create kind of a hub of student videos. So you can download the student videos, and I've just made like a big Google Drive of student videos for all of our department members to access and use in their different classes if they want to have like a model video to share with their students, or some of now in the second semester, some of our methods teachers have started using GoReact as well, so that in their sessions, their students who might not be in a clinical experience or in a field experience can still go on and they can see one of their peers teaching and use those same observation elements that we use for the student teachers. So they're getting a greater feel kind of for how our student teaching assessment and our department assessment works earlier on. I also have used it for our college supervisor training. So we meet with our college supervisors once a month, and we've gone through, and for example, last time, like our special ed teachers all looked at one special ed student teacher video and did their observation and their rubric. So we're using it just for reliability to really make sure that their feedback is similar using our stat tool. And then we also do for our student teachers in their seminar, a self-reflection assignment where they're looking at an early video themselves and a later video and really analyzing the growth that's taken place and creating new goals. And so we've used it for that as well. And our assessment director has also been learning about how to use it for CAPE, because the comments and the rubrics are connected to our department assessment tool, our student teaching assessment tool, then he can directly use that data for larger accreditation purposes as well. Just for a couple of questions that are being asked, we've funded it through our college has some specific funds set aside for COVID. So that's how we've funded it so far. And our students are able to, like, GoReact is just a website or an app they can put on their phone. So when they are teaching in a classroom, they can just open their computer and go to the GoReact website and directly film right on there. They can just start filming, and then it will store it as a video, but the college supervisor can also jump online as well. So it's worked for us on any of the students' computers. They can also film on their phones if they want to.
I'll hop in here real quick. It also works with Swivel. There's a couple little tricks that you have to do with that, but if students have access to Swivel technology, it works just great with that. And I see that there was an update that now the Zoom links that are generated from the Zoom recordings can be easily embedded right into GoReact as well. So that's a new update that has happened that has helped us greatly. So thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your comments and for adding that, Megan. You're right, that's a new addition that was just made within the last couple of weeks. Carrie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Hegley from Western Michigan University. It was great to hear from Amy, Megan, and Sarah from Grand Valley and Hope. Got some good ideas from hearing how y'all are using GoReact. But we've been using it with our teacher candidates for the last couple of years. So even pre-COVID, we used it in our final internship. And so I'll speak to that a little bit, how we used it before COVID is we would have our teacher candidates record themselves, and like the others were saying, we would use the markers to line up with the core teaching practices. So you can make, marker number 1, which is core teaching practice 1, and so forth. And so we would, even though we were observing them in person and having those one-on-one conversations live and in person, we would also have them record 2 of their lessons that highlighted their work on one of those core practices that they had set as a goal. They create SMART goals in their final internship. So they would, in one of their lessons, we could watch it, and then we could use the marker and click the marker whenever we saw evidence of that core practice. And then really, like everyone has talked about, hone in on evidence of that core practice so they could really see what it looks like in their own teaching. So that was how we really used it before COVID. We also did some kind of, different ways to get everyone kind of used to it with classroom tours and things like that as they were using it. But we used that in conjunction with our sort of regular observations that we did. And it really pinpoints when they can see the evidence. So like everything Dave showed you, really, they can see exactly where that evidence is. They can go back and look at it again. You can watch it together and really talk about it. So not only can they see maybe areas of improvement, but like Megan was saying, they can also see, oh, I did that right there. Look how I did that. I want to do that again. This is how I implemented this core practice, or elicited student response, in a positive way. I want to do that again. So they can really use it over and over again. We also, like Dave talked about, really that faster mastery, right? So they were able to rewatch it, to pick up on that a lot quicker, to see the evidence of it. So along with having those post conferences when you observe in person, where you're kind of talking through your notes, and maybe you've scripted the observation and you have all of your notes. I really like Dave's analogy with the football player, where if they kind of forget, and like we said, they're in the moment and they're so like, how was that? How was it? I think that was good. I think that was good. How was that? That was good. That's always, they're just really into how it was. And so to really have that video to also look at along with the in-person observation was just a really good complement to each other. And then certainly since COVID, yes, like Megan said, it's what we've relied on this year, and using it even with our pre-interns, our final interns. It's helped with placement, like Dave talked about, where we've been able to, certainly with our reduction in force, like everyone has dealt with, and losing clinical instructors, we've been able to give our clinical instructors teacher candidates in different geographical placements than they usually have, because they can use GoReact to observe them and still give them very valid, really rich feedback through GoReact if they need to be placed somewhere else. So that's been great. And we definitely are looking forward to continuing to use it. And like I said, what we've learned about today too, and adding some more pieces to it, there's a lot to do with it. It's very user-friendly. All of our clinical instructors had never used anything like it before. And we've done a lot of trainings on it, and they're the pros now. They're the experts, and they really learned it all. We use the help desk all the time. There's lots of ways to get help and figure out how to use it. And like everyone's saying in the chat, it's worked with our students using the app on their phone and just videoing it through the app, and then it goes right to the clinical instructor's course. It's been really easy to, when we bring on new instructors, to show them how to use it. And so it's been great.
Well, thank you so much for Amy, Megan, Sarah, and Carrie for the information you shared, for the answers, the questions that you answered, and just sharing those insights. I know that I've heard time and again that when groups get together like this and you talk about how you're using it, the way you're using video observation is just slightly different, at least slightly different than the way another program is using it. So you always gain some new ideas and perspectives. What we talked about today in terms of technology and in using video technology for improving the clinical experiences can be used no matter how you choose to use video, really. I mean, people have been using video for quite some time, since the days of the heavy shoulder cams, right? And so we hope that you will start to incorporate video into your processes more and more, because it's here to stay. It's a part of the PD process that's being used regularly. Of course, EdTPA uses video, and we're just seeing it come up more and more and expect to see that trend continue. And so using it with your students today helps them today. It also helps them prepare for tomorrow, in a sense. I did see a question that I wanted to address, and I appreciate those of you that have been sharing your knowledge and experiences in the comments as well to answer some of these questions. But with regard to permissions, sometimes those schools, often the vast minority of schools, but those that have some questions related to filming, we have the options of moving students to different areas of the class, obviously. Of course, there's an opt-in or opt-out process. And if you need kind of a template for those, there are schools that have created them and given us permission to share them. I'd be happy to provide those as well. My email address is dave@goreact.com. And so if you need that opt-in or opt-out form, I'd be happy to send it to you, and then you can adapt it however you need to. In addition, there are options for, let's say that they don't want to have students filmed at all. That's not common, but if that were the case, then you could also position the camera so that it's just on the teacher in some cases, capturing what they're doing. The same is true when they're teaching remotely. If you're not allowed to film what's happening or capture what's happening on the screen, in those more rare instances, you can often position the camera so that it's just trained in on the instructor, your student teacher, and then have that video for some formative assessment there. Hope that helps us as a few initial ideas. Any comments? We're about out of time, but we have just a minute or two left. Any other questions that are top of mind for anyone here? If so, I'd be happy to answer them, or we have some others that probably jump in and give you their experience. Well, I am, again, very, very grateful for the opportunity to be here with you today and to share this. And if you do have questions come to mind, please feel free to reach out to me at the email address I shared earlier. I'd be happy to answer them and help in any way that I can. I wish you all the best. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you to the others who were willing to participate in our session. And thank you also for coming today. So we'll see everyone later in April.